I'll be blinded by the end.
I know.
That's the lowest it goes. That's why I use my camera instead of.
I'm going to have a tan that's going to go like that.
Yeah. Hopefully this music doesn't get picked up on YouTube.
It'll be practice for having a producer talking in your ear to start.
Well, I mean, it doesn't bother me as much as it will.
Well,
like,
right, just picking it up on there, yeah.
The algorithm is like, oh, what?
Right. Yeah, we have to silence you because of copyright rules.
Yeah.
He'll be able to tell us that.
Ready for something?
And good afternoon, racing fans. Welcome to another edition of Club Hawthorne Live. Jim Miller and Emily Gullikson. We're joining you once again from crazy poor in Villa Park. Emily, this is an absolutely awesome location. We're sitting here in the restaurant area, but I'll tell you, there's massive TVs just to our right. There's TVs with horse racing over here. PointsBet Sportsbook right behind us. This is a really cool location.
It is. This is what we did the Invitational.
Yeah, that was
last
fun.
year.
Yeah.
And that's coming up, not far away. So, yeah.
Think about that, yeah. Hawthorne Derby Day for the Invitational. You're talking about turf racing here, and it's only a couple of months away. So things are just around the corner here. But Emily, it's a busy day for us today. We're going to cover some weekend stakes races, but we're covering Keeneland, and that's a lot of fun because Keeneland is a whole lot of fun. And here on Club Hawthorne Live, we talk about races live in real time. We're going to talk about the first three from Keeneland today, and it's a cool sequence to start out the card. They start out with maiden allowance runners going 3/4 of a mile, but hey, it's been a whole lot of Gulfstream and Tampa and the Florida tracks. We hope everybody's okay down there at Gulfstream because they got so much rain too. But going to the Bluegrass State's not a bad thing by any means.
Yeah, it's fun too in horse racing, right? Because it's just like there's no real off season. It just kind of shifts the season, right?
Yep.
So you're just kind of like it moves with the calendar. It's like, okay, we've left winter, and certainly being here in Chicago, it certainly feels like we've left winter the last couple days. Come to Keeneland, and it really does kind of fire you up for Derby season.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it was T-shirt and shorts weather at Hawthorne yesterday. We had a really good card yesterday. They bet really well. They've been following the races, and we thank all the bettors for doing so. The 12% takeout on win, place, and show is definitely beneficial. But that's for our Hawthorne card. Let's jump into the first here at Keeneland, Emily, because they are on the track. 5 minutes to post for the first. You and I were talking about this before we came on the air for Club Hawthorne Live. They continually show the 5 horse on the track. The more they show this horse, the more I'm going to like Cape Trafalgar in here. It's the second choice at 5-2, but I want to start with that horse only because visually this horse was extremely impressive looking on the racetrack.
Yeah, I think they have this horse very ready, especially for this meet. They've run this horse at Keeneland twice in the past, once off the layoff going back to 2022 in the October season. Has run some competitive speed figures, so I think there's positive intent behind the horse. Certainly looks ready to run. We'll have to see if today's his day that they can break through and just find the right group.
Yeah, first start of the year, but I'll tell you, this barn's so good off the layoff. They went at a 20% clip off the layoff. So you can see visually how the horse is going to be, and the horse looked very impressive. Now, the one that's on your screen there is the 8. That's Global Stage. This one looks equally as impressive to me on the racetrack right now. From the barn of Brad Cox, the horse, one start that was at Oaklawn Park back in February. We know Oaklawn's a very solid meet too, and this horse ran a respectable race then.
Yeah, he might look good on the track, but I didn't like the way that he looked in that race at Oaklawn Park. He broke slow, he rushed up. It wasn't a very fast pace at all, and then just really lacked finish. So as a short price and as the favorite, I'm against the horse in this spot, but I understand why the public's betting him. And this is why watching races is so important, because you can see those visuals that might not show up as far as paper. Now, both you and I are interested in the 2, which is
Yeah.
the horse that's on the track right now.
Yep.
And this is what doesn't really show in there is going back to that debut at Gulfstream Park where they had trouble at the start. They made that middle move. And that race has been 2 horses that have run back.
Yep.
One horse broke their maiden. The other horse ran second yesterday on the turf, but recorded, as far as optics figures, and it's still pending verification, a 100 optics figure on the turf, a big number. So that race looks like it could be pretty live and opened up live as well. We were kind of surprised at the morning line being a little bit shorter, but the horse has drifted up a little bit because I think they were the second choice when the pools opened.
Yeah, and this horse was 8-1 in the morning line. We're talking about the 2 Sweet Cherry Pie. You put the blinkers on for this start today. This is a barn that it doesn't do it often, but when they do, they actually have success first time with the blinkers as well. And you're right. When you talk about these horses, especially on debut, I'm never a fan, Emily, of when a horse breaks poorly and then gets rushed right into the action there. I think they're asking too much of the horse. I'd rather get the education and kind of ease back and then learn your way through. And I agree. Your assessment of Global Stage was this horse just got thrown right into the action, thrust into it, and then I don't think it was a great experience. Whereas Sweet Cherry Pie got to settle back a little bit, then made that middle move and learned a little bit before giving way in the lane. But it's 2 different races. It's how you look at the races and that. But I'm with you. 3-2 on the outside in Global Stage compared to 7-2 on Sweet Cherry Pie. That's a horse that I definitely would give a little bit of a look to. Now, some others in here, Emily, that we may want to touch on. What about the 3 Redemption Time? This is a horse that's 6-1 off a 4-1 morning line. Added the blinkers for the last out, but didn't really seem to do a whole lot. And that was all the way last October at Keeneland, going 2 turns. Sprinting on the return, but the most recent work was really good out of the gate. Do you make anything for Redemption Time in here?
Yeah, I mean, they have the benefit of the experience. Seems like the horse is a little bit cold on the board coming off the layoff, so that just might be a sign. They really haven't taken much money in all of their starts. Certainly has the number that fits going back to that Churchill Downs race, keeping in mind that's a 1 turn, but might end up being a prep in here. Wouldn't be any surprise by any means, but given those signs all around, maybe is one that they're going to give a start to.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the one thing that when you do see on the screen, you see a pick 5 pool over $400,000. So for those that are playing along, if you want to jump in the pick 5, go for it, because this is one of those things. I think you jumped into it, didn't you, today?
I did, yeah. I made a couple plays. And actually, I bet this race. I keyed the 2. The other horse that I used in here at a price is the 1 Forever Cool. And this goes back to the Fairgrounds race and the debut. This horse broke slow, was raced in traffic, and showed a lot more run than that running line and 5th place finish indicates. We know Dallas Stewart can pop up with horses that kind of look like this. And I know this one has a little bit more run, getting some price compensation there. So try to hook this one up with some other horses and left the 8 completely out of the exotic. So hoping to get it a little bit creative and getting a little bit of chaos.
Yeah, and credit to the chart writer there for the running line on Forever Cool, because you're right. You could look on paper and be like, it wasn't a great race, and the horse just backed out of it and had nothing left. But even the short comment, step slow start, improved 5/16th. And you're saying improved and got beaten 12 lengths? But that's a good thing to see there. So it's something where I like that the chart caller did that. But they're loading up right now for race number 1 at Keeneland. Again, 3/4 of a mile here, Emily. We will talk over what we see throughout the course of the race as well. But I think both you and I are kind of hoping to see a good effort out of the 2 Sweet Cherry Pie. Again, on looks, I liked how the 5 Cape Trafalgar looked. I couldn't take 6-5 on the outside horse Global Stage.
No, it's one that it's like I said, it's one that I played against, and in the race, I just think the price is too short. And I think that running line is just too inflated, and for the connections, just looks like an underlay territory. And sometimes you just gotta take these shots. I mean, this horse could certainly pop up, finish in the top 1, 2, 3. But if you have any reason to play against these horses at short prices, you don't like them for any reason, leave them off the tickets, and that's where you get a cash.
4-5 now too.
Yeah, that late hit came in, but then it drifted a little bit on the 2, so we shall see. One broke a little bit slow again. They're going to try to get this horse out, kind of a bigger horse down inside.
Yeah, 2 got away much better this time here.
Yep, and that 5 that was kind of on his toes naturally just kind of shows the speed with the 8 outside. The 2's getting up in there. Hopefully I have some horse, because that's a...
And the rail yesterday at Keeneland was very good. So that's something that could benefit the 2 here. Let's see if this horse runs on. They're probably going to have to push through, because the horses are going to drop into the turn there when they switch leads. But the rider's pushing through on the 2. You saw a little steady out of the 6 there going into the turn.
That might be the 6 just not being able to keep up a little bit too. Yeah. The 1 starting to drop back. kind of getting stuck behind the 6. We'll see if this
The
2
eight's,
has run.
the eight's getting a good trip, but again, the rail was good yesterday at Keeneland. It wouldn't surprise me if the 2 runs on and puts up a little bit of a fight here.
Yeah, the 2's showing a lot of run, looking to be like, that race is going to be key. Might have to mark that one down.
I mean, he's still moving pretty well, even if the 8 beats him, take nothing away from the 2.
He's on the left lead. If we can get this horse to change leads, we've got to fight off this 8 a little bit. There he goes.
I think he's going to. Once you switch leads, it's another gear.
He changed leads, and then he's on the 16th, and then got clear.
Isn't that awesome when we look smart, Emily?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened right there. The 2 did everything that we expected, and the addition of the blinkers definitely helped. They got the horse into the mix. So Louis Sai has a very good job after getting away made sure that he maintained that inside advantage, and I'll tell you, it was definitely beneficial there in the opener.
Yeah, that was nice. I was able to get a win bet on that horse, so I kind of missed the exotics, but alive in the multi-race and got a win bet home. Love a win bet there, but again, let's go back to that race that the horse comes out of back on March 4th. It's one to mark down because, as you mentioned, there was one next out winner. This is the second next out winner, and then that horse at Aqueduct yesterday that didn't win, but Ohana Honors, the name of the horse that finished second on the turf, third on the turf, but it was like a blanket finish at the wire. So almost 3 next out winners from that race, all improving speed figures.
Yeah, definitely a key race, and you have to figure that the speed figure for this horse is going to be pretty solid as well too, because that was a good effort. Like you said, this is a horse that's got to still be learning. I mean, this 3-year-old making the second lifetime start, it probably took a little longer than they would have hoped to switch leads in the lane. And then once the horse did so, just kicked away. And you'll even look here at the start. I mean, it wasn't the greatest of starts by any means, but then he got up into the mix, and it was a good, solid effort, a nice ride there out of Saez. Hey, 4-1 winner, that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely, I'll take that. And yeah, I mean, that's not an easy trip for a horse too. They have to show a lot of grit because being in between type, between another rival that's game and the rail, and showing a little bit. And I've also noticed at Keeneland, as far as lead changes, just the way those shadows are, that sometimes horses that for whatever reason don't change leads on cue or flip leads in the stretch, seems to happen more often than not at Keeneland, and I think it does have to do with the shadows.
Yeah, it definitely could do so. I mean, the horse looks good coming back there. The other horse we talked about, the 5 horse, was a horse that ran well. The 6 there at 9-1, the first timer from the barn of Bill Mott, ends up running 4th. That was a horse that raced into a little bit of traffic trouble into the turn too, so maybe a note to make for that one for that next start out. Now the next live race that we're going to look to is a little bit down the road there. That's going to be the second at Keeneland. But Emily, tomorrow is the last of the Derby points races. That really only matters for one horse, Disarm, in the Lexington, because it's 20 points to the winner. But first, before we jump into this race, I just want to ask you as an overview for the Derby point system this year. They added 5th place money in, or 5th place points. So more points were on the line for horses. And this has been a very healthy 3-year-old crop. Everybody's basically stayed on the Derby trail. Do you find it a bad thing that horses that ran second in the last 100-point preps are not going to get into the gate necessarily the first Saturday in May?
Yeah, I mean, that does seem a little bit off. You know, I mean, I understand like getting kind of those participation points because you want to get horses to run and things like that, but maybe they need to steer it a little bit more top heavy in order for those horses that do finish kind of 1-2, that they're almost automatic as well, not just first, because we know so many times, I mean, the Santa Anita Derby is the best example, right? Because you have all those 3 horses that are together on the line. You can even say the same thing for the Wood, right? Where you have all those 3 horses that are together at the wire, and they're just barely separated. Just say, like, no, the winner's good enough to automatically get a berth, but second place by that much.
Yeah, you missed by 5 points,
you know,
I mean, and you're looking at like the 100-point races this year. It's, okay, 100 to the winner, then it went 40, 30, 20, 10.
Yeah.
I'd almost rather see 100 followed by 60, and then maybe 30, 20, 10, something like that. So you're rewarded for running second. I'm thinking about the horse that comes in from Japan. You come in from Japan for the Santa Anita Derby. You run a monster race. That was a big race. You could beat, what, that much maybe? And you're not in.
In the Santa Anita Derby, which has been one of the strongest Derby preps going back years, right? Like so many horses have come out of that race. So yeah, I mean, I think that maybe that's going to take a little bit of tweak. I think that as far as awarding down and getting horses to participate, worked out for Sun Thunder, who just needed a few points, but not wanting to give the horse a top effort to get those few points to run. But yeah, it's, you know, I think everything is, especially us as we're doing this show, right? You learn by doing, and then you tweak and you figure out what works.
And the question now is, like we talk about two Phils, they're able to map out their plan. They worked last week at Hawthorne, and Larry even said that was just an easy half that they're working. He's going to get one more drill at Hawthorne and then head to Churchill Downs, but he was able to map out that plan. There could be 4 to 6 horses that are saying, we're going to have to ship to Louisville and then see what happens and then kind of go from there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
right now, they're not necessarily able to determine, okay, are we shipping to Louisville to run in the Pate Mile that day because we're not going to get into the Derby, or what's our plan going to be, or are we just going to skip and go to the Preakness? But they probably at least have to make the trip, seeing that they're much more legitimate racehorses than what Rich Strike looked like last year going into the Derby, and you saw what happened last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think for most people, Rich Strike seemed like a longer shot to get into the Derby than to actually win the race.
Yeah.
So I think being there, kind of being ready, keeping the horse ready if you want to have a chance. And then, as far as Disarm, as we start talking about the Lexington, it's a quick turnaround for this horse, because it seemed like they had Disarm not necessarily cranked up, but in a peak effort going into the Louisiana Derby. And the Louisiana Derby, I think a lot of horses had trips in there just based on the way the race shape panned out. It just didn't really play to their strengths. So now Disarm is going to not only have to kind of step up and win this, but then should they then proceed forward, have that quick turnaround into the toughest test of their career.
Right, and that's the thing. And in prior years, this used to be the traditional weekend of the Arkansas Derby, and that was like the big, massive final prep, but you didn't see as many horses wheel back quickly out of that race to run real well in the Kentucky Derby. So that's something that will be a little bit interesting. But yet, and Disarm didn't run a bad race in the Louisiana Derby as we look at the field here for the Lexington. And this is a $400,000 Grade 3 race. It's a good, solid race here. But Disarm in that last out, we'll start with that one, the 6 horse in the Lexington. In the Louisiana Derby, I think just got caught in the fact that Kingsbarns got to cruise along on the front end with nobody to challenge. And this horse ran a very respectable second.
Yeah, he ran very well, all things considered. And he's kind of been a progressive type. And I think going into the Lexington, he makes sense in this field. I mean, he's just kind of got the class on his side. He has the fitness on his side. You can make the case we haven't seen the best of him because of that. The Derby concerns, we can talk about them down the road.
Sure. But
for this race, the only thing is he's probably going to be a short price.
Right. He is going to be a short price, and I think you can beat him. I actually tried to beat him in here. I tried to beat him with a horse that'll probably also be a short price, but much more lightly raced. And Brad Cox is loaded with 3-year-old horses that are very talented. But right next to Disarm in the gate is going to be the 5 First Mission. This was a horse that was very impressive in that fairground score and that maiden victory in that last out. And you talk about the hype horses going into that race. Everybody's like, we want to watch this race. We want to see what this horse can show us. Maybe First Mission wins here and you're finding this horse back in the Preakness. But I think this one has a little bit of ability. What do you see out of First Mission?
I think he still kind of has to prove it a little bit. I mean, number-wise, he fits off those fairground numbers. Now, fairgrounds races, we still kind of have to see like where they stack up as far as class. But going into the debut, he broke slow. He made a no move in that second place finish, but wasn't favored that day, which is always noted for Brad Cox horses because, like we saw in the first, they just take money because of the connection. Ran a good race and then came back to break their maiden. Did have a very favorable trip that day as well. A perfect trip. Was a good gallop out again, a good number, but this is a tougher test in this race, and just as far as having to step up and hold their form and then getting some price compensation when anytime, horse is doing something new, right?
Yeah. So we'll see what happens out of First Mission. I expect they're going to take some money. They actually laid their horse as the favorite, but we'll see kind of how things unfold. I think Disarm ends up going off favorite. Yeah. All right. Everybody in the whole world talked about Arabian Lion going all the way back to this one's maiden race last October. And Arabian Lion was the now horse and the big horse. And this was a horse that was supposed to win and run out of the screen on Breeders' Cup Day on the undercard. And then lost. And then lost a practical move after that. Then lost to Newgate after that. And now they find themselves at Keeneland. What do you do with a horse like Arabian Lion?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I've been watching him train because he's just kind of been... he's been disappointing. I mean, there's been no excuse in those last 2 races, especially the Los Alamitos Futurity, because he should have won that race. Like, on paper, the way that it just stood up, like, he looked like that type. And there, like I said, there's been no excuse. Now, he's working forwardly. They've been working him to where he's out in front of horses and holding horses off. And based on those other races, what I see from him is a horse that needs the lead, can't pass horses. So their best bet in here, especially with this draw from the outside, is they're going to have to send,
Yeah,
and they're
go.
just going to have to hope this
Right.
horse is good enough. Maybe nobody goes near him, and they're going to give him that test to where if he gets out in front, try to hold horses off.
Right.
So is there a scenario he can win? Yes. Is there, do you want to bet him? That's
No.
completely up to you.
No, I'm not.
Okay, yeah.
No.
I find there's certainly other ways to go.
Yeah.
But again, I'm kind of drawing out there's that one path, right?
Yep.
He takes pace pressure, and that's going to throw a wrench in there. Yeah, so I'm not sold on it. I think, and I also think that they're also going to find out too how good this horse is, or what they really think he is. But off those last 2 races, he's tough to back, especially at a short price.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to stay far, far, far away from Arabian Lion. All right, this year was supposed to be the Frankie Dettori farewell tour year, and then all of a sudden we find out in this last week it may not be, because he's having fun and he's winning a lot of races and winning a lot of money and enjoying himself. He's riding the 8 Empire Strikes Fast in here for Bill Mott. Really impressive in that maiden race, speed figure-wise. Went on to a victory there, kind of got pushed from the half-mile pole all the way to the wire. Do you give a horse like this a shot here and just start number 2?
I mean, a lightly raced type can pop up. It was a strong speed figure first out. The horse that finished second to him was a horse that went off at a shorter price.
Yep.
And that was in the Wood last weekend.
Yep.
Todd Pletcher horse.
The Pletcher Dreamlike on the inside.
Dreamlike,
Yep.
yes, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and going back and watching that race, I thought Dreamlike just had no excuse to not
agree.
go by
I agree.
Empire Strikes Fast. Now that just shows me I don't know how good Empire Strikes Fast is, because it seemed like the other horse lost more than Empire Strikes Fast won. If he's, the same price that he was on debut, then yeah, I'm willing to get creative and take a shot. But I think he's going to be a much shorter price, sort of the now horse, especially with that speed figure. So, yeah, just in terms of value, not for me. If he pops up, I wouldn't be surprised, but just one that I think there's other alternatives in here that are the price that he was last out in this race.
Yeah, all right, let's get a little bit crazy with a couple of horses in here. I want to start with the inside horse, the one Baseline Beater. The running style is completely different from pretty much anyone that we've talked about, because everybody else kind of speed or close. This is a horse that tries to close from the clouds, so had no shot on the Louisiana
Absolutely.
Derby.
Yeah, you
And
can excuse.
I could put a line through that race and give this horse a little bit of consideration in here at a monster price. Can this horse at least clunk into things underneath?
Sure. I mean, like you mentioned, he's a closer. He had that excuse last out. Now the thing is, he's just got to get faster.
Yeah.
Get faster overall and kind of prove himself. But yeah, I mean, going into the Louisiana Derby, he was progressive in his maiden win. Even going 2-3 starts back now, that January 21st race, that was a better than looked effort. He had trouble, made a move. But you've got a deep closer, one of those kind of maybe underneath types.
Yeah.
If the pace does heat up, as you mentioned, there are a lot of horses in here that want to be on or near the lead. An American Lion that's going to have to send. So yeah, why not come running on late at a big price?
What about Dennington, the 7 in here? Brian Hernandez Jr. aboard this one for Kenny McPeak. Okay, the last race, again, the Louisiana Derby, there's excuses for that one. The race prior, you post a figure that puts this one right in the mix with any other horse in this field, and they lay this horse at 20-1. And I don't know if you get the 20-1 necessarily. I think you're going to see somewhere maybe more 10-12. What do you think with Dennington?
Well, that's the thing, is that one race just stands out on his past performances. So it's one of those that, is that an outlier at this point? Because if you're betting him, you're betting that he's going to run back to that one race.
Yeah. And it's his only start he ever run with Lasix.
Yes, and he looked very good on the track that day. He was a total standout as far as I'm considered watching those races at the fairgrounds. So I don't know. I just, up to that point, he'd been a little bit slow. He was warm. He was wide. The barn was a little bit cold going into the Louisiana Derby, but still won at a price. I'm not going to, make too many knocks on a horse because you're getting the price compensation. But if you are betting him, you're hoping he runs back to just that one race.
Right. All right. We have to mention Demolition Duke, the 3-horse there. Again, another lightly raced Brad Cox runner. Broke its maiden at first asking. I thought ran a very respectable race in that last out. Both of those, again, started with Lasix in there, so you have to come off Lasix for this spot. Another race around 2 turns, though. You probably are looking somewhere around the 6-1, 7-1 type of price there, which may not be too bad on this horse.
Well, I mean, he's running speed figures that are the same as Dennington.
Yeah.
So if you're getting 6-1 on the
compared
3,
to 12,
then you're going to get the bigger price on that horse, because that's the thing. I mean, both those races, they were fine. They weren't very fast. They were a little bit favorable as far as trips. and just another one that could be a short price that really doesn't have an edge over some of the other horses.
Yeah.
Do you want me to get creative with a couple other ones?
Yes, go
here?
for it.
All right.
We got 16 minutes to the second
right,
of Keeneland. We're
perfect.
going to cover the field and then tell you how we're going to bet.
All right, so let's look at Transect, right?
Yep.
His debut race, he won first out, wasn't asked for run, had plenty of upside. They put him on the lead in the second start. And granted, that was a sprint. It was at Turfway Park back on February 10th. But going to the lead, I think it was one of those, let's just see if he has that dimension, not necessarily a front-running type. He produced like a big gallop out, and that told me, I was like, this horse is going to go long. I gave him a look in the Gotham. And the Gotham, he just never had a chance that day. He broke slow. He was wide. And it was just one of those rides where, Telemo was aboard for the first time. And it was just like a mismatch. Like,
and
when they moved, it was the wrong time. When they were outside, tried to go in the right. Everything was just kind of like, it just didn't. I was on a podcast last night with a couple of our Hawthorne friends on the wrong lead, and I was saying it was like when you're just like on a bad first date, where like everything just kind of goes,
right.
Like the food comes out cold, whatever. It was like one of those type of scenarios. So you just kind of put a line through it, not the more obvious trouble, but if you go back and watch, you can definitely make excuses. The horse has trained really forwardly since. They're going to add the blinkers, put the win rider back aboard. It just shows me there's intent. I know there's more upside. If the horse isn't good enough, they're just not good enough. But this seems like the time where he's a big price. He's getting overlooked. You can go back to the Gotham where he was 8-1 that day, and he's going to be a massive price near. He's bet down from, I think he was 21 morning line. So he was like bet down last out. Now he's just getting completely ignored in here, and just seems like the time that at a big price, if you want to get creative,
you're going to get every bit of 30-1. I think you might even get more.
I think that's an overlay.
Yeah. I agree with you there. All right, hey, why not? Let's just cover everybody. So go to the 9, Prairie Hawk in here. Prairie Hawk, Saffy Joseph. All right, nobody think, Saffy Joseph, whatever. He's just taking some shots there. It worked last week.
Yeah.
So why not take another shot here and see where you can get?
Yeah, another one that tends to break a little bit slow. He has shown some run. Just as far as visuals, it looks like a horse that's maybe class compromised, not quite on the level, but he's a trying horse. But could be a little bit shorter, especially because what happened last week, and people have that recency bias, and they're like, oh, not this time.
Every horse from that part must be awesome. Exactly.
Like, I'm going to be the one that has the big price this time.
Yep.
All right, the other one that's crazy before we move on and start talking another races, the number 2, Reinvest.
Yep.
Now, he is probably the slowest horse in this field, looking at the speed figure wise, coming out of the race at Tampa that are a little bit softer, but he was very dominant in those races, just in terms of the visuals. Like, he's kind of like toying with that field a little bit. Now, he's not running super fast. He's not one of those that's like toying with the field and running off by 10 lengths, but he's showing that he wants to run. And so I think the connection's giving him a test in here. They're going to find out. I mean, he took money in both those races, so it's like they know that he can run a little bit. We're going to have to see if he can run against this group, but might be the type of horse that just runs to his competition.
Right.
And, and if he's that good, we'll find out in this spot, another one that's going to just be a big price. The
running style off that last race puts him for a possible perfect trip, too. You could have 3 or 4 out there going because Arabian Lion is forced to go from the outside. Reinvest may just sit 3-4 lengths off the pace, get that rail trip, which we just saw in the opener, and we saw all day yesterday. The rail was really good. It comes to a point of wait, and hope you get through if you have enough horse.
And this horse is patient. That's exactly the trip he had last out. There was 3 or 4 horses that were doing for the lead. He just kind of was like waiting behind them, waiting for his cue. Wasn't like steadied, wasn't rank or anything. And then was like, okay, now it's my time to run. And again, not one that's like the impressive draw off types, but he's just like, I got this, kind of that confident type win. So, kind of an interesting horse.
So we're going to wait and see what the board shows us tomorrow. There's definitely some price horses in with a shot. I think the only thing that I would say going into this race is if Arabian Lion wins, I'm going to lose. Because I would full on stay away from that. And I'm going to take that stance. I would definitely use First Mission over Disarm. So that's a horse that I think I'm probably going to work First Mission around with some of the price horses. Maybe put them first and second, or maybe even put them third in some tries with some of the monster prices, and then see if we get a complete fall apart type of race.
It could be, and especially just because of intent, and a lot of the barns just trying to find out what they have, and where to go forward. Yeah,
I'm happy.
It's an interesting race,
and I hate to say it, but I'm actually happy you don't have 5 or 6 barns and horses grasping for straws, trying to get those last points to get into the Derby. And I'm not saying Disarm is doing that by any means, because that was their first stakes try in their last out. But I don't want to see those horses that have been grinding it out, 10 points here, 20 here, 10 here, type of thing, trying to just find any way in. So it's a really good race. It's a good standalone race. I really like this race. I think Keeneland did a great job with it. And it's a really good card there tomorrow. So make sure you check that out. All right, race number 2 at Keeneland. Maiden claimers here, $50,000 is the tag. We're going to take out the 4, Bourbon Fever, take out the 11, A With Purpose. I'm just glancing up at the board right now. The 8, Talkin' Pharaoh, is the horse that's taking the action here. Is that right? That is right. 5-2 on Talkin' Pharaoh. All right, a horse that we know can show speed, ran a good race last April at Keeneland, then ran at Saratoga, has been away since. All right, let's start there. Everybody bets Wesley at Keeneland. Is that what's happening right now?
You know, possibly, and just looking at it sort of by default. I think sometimes that happens a little bit too. Like, where are you going to go? This feels safe. We know it's a horse that has speed, the connections, going on Lasix, all those things that people just kind of like, and it's on their side. But I mean, as a horse, debut-wise, it's so tough to take those speed figures at a great slot, especially when it's Wesley Ward, when it's like those are the horses that typically win, and this one didn't. He didn't really show much in the second start, which again was off another layoff. Now he's off another layoff in here. These are not horses I want at short prices ever, especially now they're going to run in for a tag. Looks like there's a lot of desperation going on here, and there could be some other horses in here that don't have to show that much improvement to be on the level of Talkin' Pharaoh. And that's assuming that Talkin' Pharaoh runs back to that speed figure that he ran on debut, which could be a little bit suspect because it's only 4.5 furlongs. Yeah,
and you see them in the paddock here. They're going to start walking out. A horse that just glanced by that I want to see when they come onto the racetrack will be the 9 Northwind, because the horse caught my eye just in passing in the paddock. So we'll get to that one in a second. But looking at the board right now, Emily, some of the others here that are taking money. All right, Northwind is taking money. Okay, so let's just go right there with Northwind. 3-1 on this one. Comes from the barn of Joe Sharp. All right, it was Mud, Oaklawn in the debut. Really never in the mix. But again, off a step slow and back. But it was one of those races where I think Arietta just said, hey, today's not our day. Let's get a little education, get some mud kicked in our face, and then go from there. You pick up Irad today. If I was hoping actually to glance up and see 6 or 7 to 1s, but I guess if you see 3 to 1, that's a good sign. It could be a live horse as well.
Yeah, it very, very well could be. And again, maybe it's by default. I'm trying to look back and see if the race was productive. Doesn't seem like it was that productive a race. There was one next out winner.
Right, the third place finisher came back and won.
Came back and won. It was a Steve Asmussen horse, but then really didn't do much in the next start. The other horses haven't been much, so gonna have to step up a little bit, but at least provide some alternative to the 8.
Yeah, the 12 Mass Patrol, they just showed that one walking in the paddock, 9-2 in the morning line, currently sits at 7-1 on the board. So really not a great sign that they're not getting a whole lot of action on this one. And you don't know what to make of it. I mean, they tried sprinting in the debut. Then it's like, okay, we're going to go a route. Then we're going to route on the turf. Okay, that doesn't work. We're going to go back to a dirt sprint. Then we're going to go to a turf route. I don't. It's another possible grasping for straws type of horse.
Yeah, it is a little interesting. Now, there could be something there to give this horse a look, especially at the price, and why it might be a little bit overlooked, because he is tough to get that read on. Number-wise, this horse is far more consistent and faster than some of the other horses in this field. Ran a good race here in his debut, had an extra wide trip, earned a strong speed figure. Maybe that set him back a little bit in that second and third start. Then they had the big layoff that followed. Michelle Lovell brought him back at the fairgrounds this year. The return race on December 19th broke slow. Then they caught the turf course, and that can actually have an excuse because the rider completely messed that up. It was extra wide.
That horse was running on the outside rail.
Yeah, and it was so weird because there was like, for some reason, they got the idea that the outside is where you want to be.
I know, that was...
And all the paths were fine at the fairgrounds. I did notes there, and it was fine. So I think there was so much overreaction. It's really hard to take much from those fairgrounds turf races. But Michelle Lovell is a very good trainer. However, at fairgrounds this year, that barn was so cold. Horses that you thought would run didn't. So I'd be willing to give that horse a pass from those races, just knowing the barn was cold, knowing this horse has some back numbers, especially if there's some price compensation. 12 is certainly one I have all my tickets going forward.
Yeah, 7-1 right now, so definitely getting a little bit of a price. So I narrow the inside. The 2 Collect from Mike again. it's Brad Cox, so you know they're going to take some money. But I was a little bit surprised. They laid the horse at 7-2 in the morning line. You look at 5-1 on the board. So not getting the action that I think necessarily would have been expected. The works are okay, not great. I mean, the horse was a $65,000 purchase on the Keeneland sale. Again, not a huge purchase price by any means, but they're also debuting for the tag here, first time out.
Yeah, and they had the horse working at Horseshoe Indianapolis last year. So one that they haven't really been pointing to the major circuit. Right. So running here for a tag kind of tells you a little bit cold on the board. Certainly could run, but not giving the most live signs by any means. No,
the 3 Rivoli's at 10-1 right now. So this is a horse that's coming out of a race again. Was racing at Horseshoe Indianapolis last year and running okay. Not too bad at races. The last start out at Turfway Park got claimed for $30,000. So it's the first start for the new barn. Here's the thing. The barn never wins first off the claim. That's something that will scare you. So maybe a little bit later on, that would be the reason I would stay away. Maybe that's why we're seeing 10-1 on this horse.
Yeah, I think so too. The double layoff line, slight step up in class. I think they kind of have the horse protected in some ways, right? They claimed it for 30. They're like, oh,
if we lose it for 50, we lose it.
Yeah, we'll take the 20,000 right off the top. No problem. So protecting here, and those are connections that also can run horses out at Horseshoe Indianapolis. So we'll see. We got the 1 running off a little bit.
Yeah, and let's talk about that horse. 9-1 on the board right now. St. Elmo, the 1 horse that we're talking about, comes from the barn of Mike McCarthy. Lasix for the first time today. In the debut, drew the rail. That was a full field of 12. Got away okay in there.
A little bit slow.
And then, yeah. Oh, you're right. Got away step slow and then rushed up into it. That's right. And then you backed out of it. But the horse went off at 6-1 in that spot. So there must have been some sort of intent. Joel Rosario picks up the call. I mean, to me, one of the things about this horse is there's no option. It's go. You have to try to go. You have to hope you break better.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be a 1-run type. So either St. Elmo could get away on the inside and err from the inside or run a very similar race to what we saw in that last out.
Yeah, it's one I had to use just kind of for those reasons. There's enough changes going on for this race, given the time off since, pointing in this spot, dropping in class, those types of things that I could see this horse pop up. So I want it when I used who's on my tickets.
All right, so who's on your ticket? Can I ask?
Yeah, the other ones I have, I think we've talked about everybody. The other 2 that I used are the other first time started. I didn't use the 2, but I used the 7 and I used the 10, just because I can't not use. I don't know how good they are, and I know they're going to be big prices. Where I knew the 2 was going to be a short price, and there were some things just as far as the barn that I didn't use. But I used the 7, has some steady works coming into this race. Again, figured it was going to be a big price, and the same thing with the 10 could certainly pop up for this type of barn. So those are ones I used just because I couldn't knock them.
Right. There's the 10 on your screen right there. And the 10 looked pretty good on the racetrack, too. That horse caught my eye in the post rate also. It definitely looked good, and then you look up and you see 33-1. So wouldn't be surprised by that horse either. I haven't gotten – there's the 7 right there on your screen. So
looks fine as well.
Yeah. Looks. I don't mind being away from the pony for that debut either, and that horse looks just fine. I like those over what we're seeing there with the 5. And again –
5 we haven't talked about yet.
The 5 is Little Steven. You put blinkers on here. All right, the debut race finished 6th at 40-1.
That was an open length winner that day. They had a little bit of traffic, so kind of a weird race first out.
And then the next start out, again, they took no action, but the start was not good, and then the horse was never a factor. Now they throw the blinkers on here today, so you figure at least a little bit more intent to try to have that focus getting away from the gate.
Yeah, the horse has been a little bit green in both those races, so giving the horse a little bit more time, making the class change, the circuit change, the rider change. At least they're trying something, trying to show some intent out there. Maybe could pop up. I mean, the debut figure wasn't that bad. The number kind of stacks up with some of the others in here and stacks up with today's race par. Yeah, so I could get to that one. I don't think it's one I used, but might be kicking myself in the end.
I still like the looks of the 9 on the track, Northwind. I mean, this is a horse that looked good in the paddock, looks good out there on the racetrack. If I'm betting the race, I'm going to work around the 9 Northwind, and maybe not necessarily putting the horse on top. Maybe it's finding some prices and working the horse either on top or in second in the gimmicks here. But I know the 9 would be on my ticket in this spot. But We have to cheer for you, Emily. So again, we're cheering for the 1.
Yeah.
We're really cheering for the 7 or 10.
There we go.
Who else?
And 12. 12 is in there as well.
And the 12 and the 12 is in there as well.
Yeah.
So if my 9 wants to run second to the 7 or 10, that's perfectly fine. And everybody's going to be happy, and we're going to move forward on to the next race. Now, if the 9 wins, then Emily can smack me, and then we'll move onward to the next race. But again,
No, the 9
the 12
makes
looks
sense.
okay
You know,
there.
it was the type of race where I'm like, since I singled the 2 there, and wanted to catch a price in this leg. So that was pretty much it. That, you know, but yeah, the 9 looked like...
You singled the 2 in race 1? That's awesome. Nice job.
Thanks.
I like that. $10 horse on the single?
I mean, I had to, you know...
Yeah, I mean, you have to somewhere.
Off the data and off those horses that had already run back and saw the horse was taking money, and I didn't like the favorite, and everybody else was kind of like, whatever. That horse just stood out to me. I you know, one I had to use.
I love taking the early stance because, I mean, if you're going to put together multi-race tickets, you have to do it somewhere. And everybody says, oh, well, I want to be alive, so I can't do it early. No, if the early race is where you have to take your stance, that's where you have to do it. So I'm glad it paid off for you there. All right, they're loading into the gate right now for race number 2 at Keeneland. Again, these are $50,000 maidens. They go 3/4 of a mile. We want to see how they load here. The 3, Rivoli was just putting up a little bit of a battle, but not too bad. See, okay, maybe a little bit more of a battle than you'd like to see.
He's like, I heard you. He's like, hold my beer.
Stop talking about me, Jim. I've made 4 starts already. You're screwing me up. Okay, so that not a great sign there out of a horse that's made 4 starts. Now, what you'd love to see is the 7 walk in professionally, the 10 walk in, the 9, who I like, walk in professionally, which he did. If the 9 wins again, Emily's not going to be as happy here. 10's losing a little bit of weight as he walks into the gate right now, so that might be an added plus for this runner. But and he's at 41-1 right now. Then the 12 did take action late, betting down to 5-1. So that was to be expected.
You know, the one thing I'll say is this. This goes into betting. Is, you know, if the 9 wins or the 8 wins or one of these other horses I have that wins, and my multi-race tickets don't go on, that's the way it goes.
Right.
But I had win money on the 2 in the first race as well.
So
I think that's important with bettors to remember that even if, you know, you have those singles at prices, don't just, you know, go, you don't have to just go, well, they're on my pick 5 ticket, so now I'm not going to do anything else. Like, if you like that horse at a price, you can still bet that horse to win or play your exotics and key that horse, which is pretty much how I played the race.
Yeah, I mean, he tried to hustle the 9 out of there, and then that horse just didn't want to go with the top 2. So it's the 6 and the 8 going head and head. Talking Pharaoh, the horse who took all the money, and then Insolito, horse that's had those opportunities. The 7's in between horses and 7th there. That's a 12 on the outside moving. So
we'll
see. Like the 12 to keep going.
They have some run, not getting much from the 2. The 6 is trying to hold on. We'll see who's on the inside. The 3.
All right, who's that splitting horses? That's the 3. That's Rivoli. Okay.
Yeah. Doesn't look that
Again,
good.
nobody's coming. Everybody on the inside is running on.
And it's tough. And it just looks kind of like, it looks like Hawthorne, right?
It does it's Hawthorne early in the meet or Hawthorne in December.
Yeah, and like where it's just the horses kind of range up on the outside and then they struggle to pass in the stretch. Oh, the 7, not on the inside.
Yeah,
oh, no,
that was the 1. Yeah, that was the 1. And the 1
came closing late.
When they go back, if they show the replay and show them coming out of the gate, Rosario was scrubbing hard on that horse out of the gate to get him into the race, and he just didn't want to go. I'm trying to find out where he is here, looking at the stretch run, because the 1 was well back, but when he dove down to the inside, he was full of run. I think he's probably going to finish 4th. He's not even in the picture yet, Emily.
No, he was closing. I mean, idea was right. Play against those horses, and just couldn't, you know.
And here's the hard thing now, because now when you handicap Keeneland, you make that determination again. Yesterday was such an inside day and a front end day. We've seen 2 races today where the inside horses have gone on, even when someone has ranged up alongside of them who you look on paper and say, okay, that horse can contend, and they haven't been able to go on. But you see 5-1 on top of 14. Let's see if the 1 did get up there. The 1's still not even in your picture here.
I know, that's amazing. Yeah. Yep.
So you're looking there. So it's here's the 1. Look at the 1 come flying late there. But again, right through on the inside, he got up for 3rd.
Yeah.
The 1 definitely got up for 3rd, and so the rail we know is good. So, but here's the thing now.
We know that 8 is bad. The 8 horse is bad.
8 bad, rail good. But all right, and here you see the head on out of the gate. There was a little. Oh no, they said the 8 was 3rd. I thought the 1 clearly got up.
It looked like that to me, but yeah, it's tight. But you know what? The one next out might look a little bit dirtied up on paper. A little bit worse in that 4th place than 3rd place spot.
So Rivoli was 14-1 in there. That was a little bit surprising to me. But again, I didn't like how the horse loaded into the gate. Things leading up to it gave some signs there. The 6 took action. Okay, on paper, we knew the 6 was going to show speed. So that's the reason it took some action. Now, if you're progressing during the card, and we're going to talk about one more race from Keeneland, the 3rd, we may have to change our handicap and logic a little bit when we get there to say who's going to get away from the gate and who's going to get to the inside, because it is something that we'll definitely have to focus on. Race number 2 at Keeneland, we're not fond of you. All right, before we look at the 2nd from Aqueduct, which is 14 minutes to post, Emily, the other stake that we're going to cover is the Count Fleet handicap at Oaklawn Park. Goes as race number 9. It's a field of 10 tomorrow. You're going 3/4 of a mile. Strobe on the outside. You see at 7-2 in here. This is a horse that's been very solid. I mean, we talk about Brad Cox. It seems like wherever you're at, he's got this one here. But a winner of 4 or 5. The other was a second place effort and not a bad effort. This is going to be the first time, though, against Stakes Company. Is Strobe a horse that should be the favorite and should be the horse to beat you in this spot?
Yeah, I mean, I could see why he's going to take money in here off those speed figures, but this is the first time at Oaklawn Park. Not, speed figures don't always transfer race to race. First time in Graded Stakes Company. He's going to have to deal with not only those challenges, but also the pace scenario. There's other horses in here that are as fast as the first call that want to be on or near the lead. Edge to Edge is obviously in the race as a rabbit to send for the stablemate number 5, Tejano Twist. Skelly has early speed. He's on the inside. Cogburn, he's been able to show speed in the past. Pirate Rick, they're in there. It's like Candy Van Rug. A lot of these horses want to be on or near the lead. And Strobe, also wanting to be on or near the lead, has that outside post. He's going to have to use to clear with those other horses on the inside, a very fast, contentious pace with those other hurdles of having to transfer his form to Oaklawn Park, as well as step up into Graded Stakes Company, $500,000 race. To me, if he's a short price, and same thing with Skelly at a short price that kind of has similar hurdles, not horses that I'm interested in this race.
This is a complete fall apart race for me. I mean, they're going 21 and change to the opening quarter. If they don't, I would be shocked. This is like a 21-1, 21-2, 44 to the half, and then it's just a cavalry charge in the stretch. There is a chance of weather, so we'll have to see what happens for that too, because it could come up as an off track tomorrow at Oaklawn Park. So you have to take that into the mix. So I'm going to look away from all of the speed. Let's start looking at some of these closers. So let's start with Tejano Twist, who you mentioned already. This one from the barn of Chris Hartman. You get your rabbit in there for one, but you get like 4 other rabbits in there too. And this is a horse that is going to come from out of it, but has one from off the pace and one from off the pace over the track. And the race in the slop 2-back wasn't bad either. No. Probably goes favorite in here, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. Especially because I think, people kind of see the pace the same way. You see all those horses that have like 1s in their running lines.
Right.
And he fits. I mean, he's got a strong leg kick. He's got plenty of pace to close into. He's in good form. Has the race over the course, already has the grade 3 win. He's shown his class, showed his consistency. I think he makes a lot of sense in here.
Yeah, I think he does too. I mean, I would use him. I mean, he's never missed a board at the distance, never missed a board over the racetrack, and just gets the right setup. And Francisco Arrieta, he's a very good rider. He rode at Hawthorne a couple falls ago, and he was excellent. And he's fitting right there at the Oaklawn meet. Now, if you don't want 5-2, maybe you want 20-1 on the 9 Pain. This is a horse from the barn of Steve Asmussen. Again, ran okay in the slop in that last out and has the running style that may suit in here, and you will get a decent price on this horse. So I think Payne's a horse that maybe could get into the mix. This horse was 9-5 in that last out. Of course, it's not the same caliber of race, but you might get the 20-1 in here.
Yeah, and I think that if you are playing him, I think you should kind of demand that type of value, because the class change is a big difference. He did run very good 2-back, that January 28th race where he did break slow, made that big sustained middle move, was drifting out a little bit late. That's kind of what made him a little bit vulnerable on March 9th. But the other times that he's been in Graded Stakes Company, and there's only been 2 other times, so it's tough to hold that against him. But he's also, an 8-year-old horse where he's had plenty of foundation. He's come up short at the Graded Stakes level, so I think he has to prove himself on class. I can understand why they're running him here. He should have plenty of pace to close into, but it's class. Now, Steve Asmussen has 3 in here. We already mentioned Skelly. Cogburn a little bit, but Cogburn's interesting to me. I know he's a horse that has early speed, and that's probably his preferred running style, but he also has been able to rate, and he's also still lightly raced. And I think a lot of the times where he's been on or near the lead is because they've just been kind of the best horse in the race.
Sure.
And he might be coming into this race the right way. This is his third start of the form cycle. He ran a huge race back on February 5th. That was a big speed figure. He had to stand as the best of the speed to hold the blanket finish. Probably saw some regression in the Grade 3 Whitmore where he was a short price that day. Had to come from the outside, so you could actually see the kind of same running line from Cogburn as number 10 Strobe here, where Cogburn kind of rebounds. Rosario's going to get back aboard. Rosario, as we saw in the last race, the last race being the second over at Keeneland, a strong finisher. So maybe they just try to rate a little bit in that race and get this horse to finish where he's been able to set up horses in the past. And again, could just be one that at a big price. If you're trying to say, well, if he's in the right spot, right time and place, maybe he gets a trip.
And think about this. I mean, Joel Rosario is a marquee rider. There's a lot of stakes at Keeneland on tomorrow's card, yet he's going to pop up over here at Oaklawn Park. Again, we talked time and again about intent. Go all the way back to confidence game winning at Oaklawn earlier in the spring. Intent can go a long way. So these guys want to make money too. They want to go where their best shot is to make the most money. So something to look to there.
And now that you mention that, one of the other horses for us on Rebel Day that scored, that it started off the pick 3 for us was, and I didn't start off, I think it was the middle leg, or we hit the double with that 3 horse. Remember that Steve Asmussen horse and who was riding that day? Joel Rosario. And he gave that horse that perfect stalking trip. So, Rosario and Asmussen has been a very live combination at Oaklawn Park this meet.
I'll tell you, I'm giving a shout out to Dunkin' Donuts. They're keeping me awake today, so proud of them.
I'm a little envious of that.
As they're caffeinating me for this morning, but that is a whole nother story. All right, Peter Miller, longtime known as a top trainer on the California circuit. He's popped up at Oaklawn Park with horses this year and done okay during the course of the meet. Radical Right's a horse that you don't say, okay, you're coming in from Turf Paradise and you're going to run a huge race at Oaklawn Park. But again, running style may suit, and this is a horse that's also going to be a big price too.
I'm glad you mentioned this horse because he's a little bit sneaky in here. They ran him in the Grade 3 Palos Verdes. That was the first start of the form cycle. Peter Miller's been a little bit cold at Santa Anita this year, just kind of by that barn standard. Probably we're giving the horse that race and then figured we can run in the Phoenix Gold Cup and we can just pick up a check. But that did not go as planned because this horse had issues at the gate. He broke slow, had a rough start. He had to move into the fast part of the race. You could almost give an excuse for him that day, just all things considered. I'm trying to remember what happened at the start. Good thing I have a note here. He was restless in the gate, so he was unprepared at the start. And we've seen that where horses just aren't ready, and that's an excuse right off the bat.
I think broken air for the comment is nice. Unprepared start would probably be a better comment.
Because that's what happened first, right? The horse was like being agitated, and the door's open. He's like, "Oh wait,
I gotta go. I have to go."
The hops in the air. I actually had to rewind it. Right, I'm glad that you mentioned this because I'm like, did they hit their head at the top? It was they didn't, but so that race is an excuse. So the fact they're going to show up here kind of shows, again, maybe some intent, some confidence, and maybe getting a little bit overlooked.
Right. All right. We have to mention the horse right next to Radical Right, the 7 Surveillance. This one from the barn of Keith DeSormo. Okay, Keith DeSormo and James Graham, they've had a little bit of success at Oaklawn Park this meet. We talked about it with confidence game and that. It's a long string of stakes races here. Maybe not to this caliber, but figures-wise, the race 3 back puts the horse right there with any of them, and you probably get every bit of that 6-1 in the morning line.
Yeah. I think that's the big test for this horse in general because he should have pace. He's in form. He's number-wise fits. It's just in terms of class. Now he has one race in Graded Stakes Company that was the Commonwealth last spring at Keeneland. So interesting that they picked this spot and not that spot. But he, Surveillance finished 4th that day. It was 96 optics figure. It was in the slot. It was a 7 furlong race. And maybe distance-wise, they're like, maybe 6 is a little bit better for this horse. We're going to see. Because sometimes you don't think that, right? When you see closers, you're like, they want the added distance. But it's not always the case. You have to go by individual to individual. And this horse has been kind of closing, going shorter. So this might be the right spot. We might have to see. But I think class is going to be the test. So a little bit of price compensation, but could certainly see this horse for sure.
Yeah, they are on the track for the second at Aqueduct. We'll get to that in one moment. But Emily, so when we're looking at a race like this, I think I'd probably toss Strobe again. It's just outside draw, running style. I would stay away from Skelly because I think they're going to take a whole lot of action here. That being said, Tejano Twist is a horse that figures, yes, it's going to take a lot of action. So I think you probably do one of two things. You might even single this horse if you're playing multi-race wagers, or you try to find some of these other prices and maybe hook it up with this horse in first and second. Is that kind of how you would look at things for the Count Fleet?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I would single closer at a short price.
And that's hard,
that just seems a little bit too close to the edge, even for somebody like me. So maybe I'd use a few, especially since I can make a case for a couple prices. So I'd try to hook those price horses up. Cogburn, keeping Radical Right, Surveillance in the mix. I'm trying to think. I think was there one more? Maybe not.
I mean, maybe Kane you throw in there. Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, maybe for more for underneath those type of horses. But yeah, trying to key those horses around Tejano Twist and trying to get the horses like Skelly and Strobe out of the mix and find some value that way.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's how we see the Count Fleet Stakes goes as race number 9 tomorrow at Oaklawn Park. Now, before we get back to race number 3 at Keeneland, we're going to shoot over to Aqueduct for one race here today. $25,000 claimers in the second. I kind of like this field. It was an 8-horse field in here. They go the one-turn mile. I've loved the one-turn mile race. Kind of everybody says it's that extended sprint. What I like is it's just a long run down the backside so everybody can kind of find their position. But look at the board right now. The 5, My Friend's Bear, currently sits as your favorite, and probably deservedly so off a pretty impressive win at the distance. You're claimed out of that start there to a new barn here. You're looking at 5-2 off the 7-2 morning line. So let's start there with My Friend's Bear. This is a horse that I think style-wise, and that probably puts the horse in the mix, don't you think?
Yeah, it's a competitive race. They did have a favorable trip in that most recent start. So when you're looking for knocks, sometimes that can be a negative. Especially at a short price, but wouldn't be any surprise.
Right.
Maybe there's other ways to go. I mean, looking at the plot, it's kind of a tricky race because there's not a lot of horses in here that are kind of those EEP types, right?
Yep.
They're all kind of pressers, but at the same time, the plot has a higher speed rate. So it looks like even though those horses that don't want to be on or near the lead, they could still be bunched up.
Right.
They could still be going fast.
Right.
And then it comes down to having maybe a little bit of class for this climbing level and finishing ability. 4, I guess, is getting a little bit overlooked. Maybe 8. That's a horse that looks like kind of decent on the plot.
Yeah, doing it the right way. Yeah, Linda Rice. I mean, you know Linda Rice in New York is always going to be good. You'd probably get a little bit of an excuse because you had the slop in that last out. So a fast track return in here. 7-2 on the board, so they're taking a little bit of action as well. And this is a horse that I think actually, like you mentioned, it depends on the distance. This horse probably wants more distance off those last couple where they were going 3/4 and 7/8. So going a mile here for doing it the right way, I think is the right spot. Because like you mentioned, when there's not a ton of pace, you get that long run. I think this is a horse that will at least be up there in the mix early on.
Yeah, and Linda Rice also had his 7, who did show some speed in that most recent start. They weren't completely on the lead, but were up close to a very fast early pace. So, kind of having that 1-2 punch in this race, with the 7 going forwardly placed, maybe the 5 has to kind of use a little bit to try to keep up with the 7, and then the 8 can kind of get back to a top effort and, run the race from 2 back, and that race certainly fits.
Yeah, put that horse in the mix for sure. The 2 Pit Boss is a little bit intriguing here at 5-1 to me. The last time this horse was in for the 25 was 3 starts back, and the horse was the 2-1 favorite. Now, did disappoint there, but was claimed for the 25, and that was the second straight start that the horse was in for that tag, got claimed. They go up for 32,000, run a pretty good race. The last out they run for 40. Okay, it was a well-beaten 40. The winner was a runaway winner in there. But now you're back in for the 25. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see this horse being claimed again. But you're looking at 5-1 now compared to the 2-1 favoritism. We saw 3 starts back. I think this is a horse that could contend. You pick up Jose Ortiz, too.
Yeah, I mean, as far as being favored 3 back, I think a lot of that just had to do with the barn going out for Atris at the time.
And that's when they were on fire.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
A slight pattern there. So we'll have to see if this horse can turn around, but I don't disagree. He's certainly back at the right level for his abilities, and since the claim, the other barn just had the horse a little bit above his head. He's back at the right level, has to put forward a top effort, but getting some price compensation certainly wouldn't surprise.
All right, let's look at the 4 here for a second. Hammering Armor. This is a horse that the morning line odds maker, and he's a very good odds maker there, David Aragona, laid the horse at 5-2. You see 6-1 on the board right now. Is that, you think, because of just running style? Because the horse typically has to come from out of it. I mean, an easy winner for 16,000 at the distance 3 back. The race 2 back for 40 was a very respectable race. And then the last out again, that was a sealed track, may not have liked the racing surface, but a fast track return. 6-1 seems to be a really good price on this horse.
Yeah, it's a confusing price,
Yeah,
really.
it is.
Because,
it really is.
Because they're 3 back, the January 29th race is super strong speed figure when they won that day, and then had a better than looked effort in that February 25th race. The weather conditions, as you mentioned, they were at the starter allowance. You can give a little bit of a pass. They were vet scratch back on April 6th, though I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but McCarthy was named that day. They're back aboard. But yeah, the board surprises me because looking at the plot, kind of one of those horses does come from off the pace, but if they do bunch up, that's the type of trip that, closers can benefit from.
Right.
But he's not like a deep closer. He's sitting in quadrant 2. Deep closer's more like the 1 sitting in quadrant 4.
And here's the thing, and you mentioned the vet scratch, and this is an important thing too, because you have your options. I know in Illinois, at a field of 8 or larger, you can train or scratch and come out and go right back in. You can have a racing office request scratch where they're saying, hey, we need you for another race. If you vet scratch, you have to wait 7 days. Now, like you said, this horse was a vet scratch on the 6th of April. Okay, 8 days later, all of a sudden this spot comes up, and you're looking at it. Maybe they had this race kind of figured out, and they were pointing towards this one, and they just didn't like how that race looked. You never know or what the weather was or the track or anything. I think 6-1 is a really good price on a horse that clearly loves the distance. This is the 40th start at the mile distance for the 4-horse here too.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. And that race was for 12.5. As they're going in the gate, the other horse I want to give attention to is the longest shot. One of the longest shots on the board right now is the 6. Mount Travers, who's also coming back to the 25 level where they've run competitive numbers in the past, coming out of that most recent starter allowance. It is a horse that's on in every other pattern. If you just kind of cover up a little bit or whatever you want to do to the March 25th race as well as the February 25th race, and you just isolate March 4th, January 29th. Those are speed figures that are strong for this level and for this group. A horse that's shown some early speed. Eric Cancel back aboard. Cancel's been aboard in the past. Actually has this horse's most recent win, which was at this condition at Saratoga. So could be a little bit sneaky in here at a price.
I'm totally intrigued by this race. The 4 is the one that I would actually sit with in this spot here. So that's the route that I'm going to look to. Hammering Armor and 10 wins at the distance. You can't overlook that one. So that's the route that I'm going to go in this spot, Emily. We'll see as they're loading up. But the mile race, again, it's a fun race. It's an extended run. Oh, somebody tries to go through the gate. Who is that? The 7. That was a good job by the assistant starter there. Grabbing slip. Oh, it's a dangerous job because they're up in the gate. And for one, when the horse breaks through the gate, you're saying, okay, am I going with the horse? Am I grabbing the horse? Am I going to try to stop it? Or you're letting the outrider do it? Because they have 2 outriders actually parked within a 16th of a mile after. These guys, they're brave. They have to be a little crazy too. But
well, you see with the riders, how many riders get injured in the gate? They're not even, you'd think falling off a horse, without question. That's danger, right? I've fallen off many of horses in my life.
What's that saying about your riding ability, Emily?
Hey, I'm not riding now, so I think that's
there you go. There's your answer. So, they loaded back in. Yes, they got away a step slowly there, and then we'll kind of see how things unfold. But getting out of the gate, it looks like the outside horse there gets away in pretty good order. That is the 7 that got away. So the horse that broke through the gate.
Yeah, and that kind of looked like that as we were talking through the race. The 7 would probably show some speed, maybe set it up for the 8, getting that stalking trip. But also what we're seeing on paper is a lot of those horses not wanting to go for the lead. And they're all kind of
way closer than I expected.
Yeah, I think that is maybe the class change and just having that horse in there. But yeah, they're all kind of bunching up, going I don't know. I don't want the lead, but I can't let them get too far away either.
Yeah, 24 for the opening quarter. They're not going that fast by any means. They're trying to kind of find that spot here.
Yeah, they're running it like almost like a turf race right now. Kind of bunching up a little bit, staying covered, and we'll see.
Pit Boss is going to get shut off along the inside there going into the turn. I think they tried to get up to a spot where they shouldn't have.
Getting a good trip though. Certainly has finishing ability. Has been between those horses. Not getting much from the 8, being wide throughout. We'll see. The 5 has been the other horse that you kind of mentioned right off the bat. And there's that big long shot, that 6 sitting right outside, getting ready to stalk and pounce. Yeah, it's been in a great trip the whole time.
No excuse for the 4, and the 4 is not going to win from there, I don't think, as they go to the outside.
We'll see if the 6 can outkick the 5, but the 5 got that first run, got a little bit of opening. The 4 showing run on the outside. The 6, they're fighting on.
The 4 might clunk up for place.
Yeah. Somebody running on the inside, but it looks like the 5 is going to finish under a drive. And
nobody's finishing great.
No, they're all kind of.
Very respectable effort out of the 6.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, that one is, literally reading between the lines.
Yep.
Saw that every other pattern, had a win at the level,
Yep.
the win at Cancel. It's like, this horse is who they are, but this is the time this horse is going to run a big race, and they did. Just not quite big enough to get the win, but gets another check and a very respectable third. We'll probably get that next out, and then just wait one more race.
Correct. Go to every other race. But here, you see at the finish. Okay, it was a length and 3/4, 2 lengths to the end, and the 6 did end up running second in there. But that's one of those things where, okay, at 30-1, running second, if that's a horse you liked and you were able to work with some others in there, that exacta's probably going to come back pretty good. And we mentioned the 5, my friend's Bear from the top.
Right.
But this was a horse taking the action and opened as the favorite.
Yeah. Logical type, and got that perfect trip, pushing the pace, that soft opening quarter, and good race.
Yeah, it was a good race. All right, it's awesome talking about Keeneland here. So we do have Keeneland as our final race here of the day. This is the third race from Keeneland. Starter Allowance Company. They go 6.5 furlongs in this spot. We're taking out the 2 horse in here. That's Golden Dagger. And these are, for the Starter Allowance Company, they're all still a pretty lightly raced bunch in here. They're 3-year-old fillies. And looking at the board right now, 7-5 on the inside with the 1. Frigid Lady.
That horse made sense to me.
It makes sense. I don't know if 7-5 makes sense.
No, or maybe the morning line being a little bit off, because this horse did seem pretty logical in here. I think the cutback distance is positive. The races that were back on the main track sprinting certainly fit. Baker's sending out some live runners. Has a pair in here. I did have a pair in here. Does he still have the other one? Yeah.
Yep.
Also has the 6. But I thought the 1 made a lot of sense. But certainly getting bet like they can't lose right now.
All right, so I've been privileged. One of the things that I love to do in racing is call races. I've been fortunate to call a few hundred races, and it's fun. It's a track announcer's nightmare at times trying to figure out the name of a horse. So you go with the horse like the 3 here, and you just start making dashes as you try to figure it out. So it's Margot in a Bubble Bath is the name of the horse, but you could have gone a few different ways in there, because you could go Marge at the start, but it's got to be a Margot, then the in a bubble, but what it is, you're allowed so many spaces for a racehorse name, so sometimes you have to cram a whole lot together, and then you have to get it approved. And that's the other thing, too. Sometimes it's a battle getting names approved. You'd be surprised the amount of horses that I've tried to name in the past that have been shot down, too.
I might teeter the line of what I can get away with here. But
we're on YouTube. Go for it.
There was one, because I have to do the videos on Twinspires, right? So I'm reading it. And a lot of times I'm not saying it out loud because I'm like writing or, going off the numbers or whatever. And the horse was one of those where there's not spaces and it's different but okay. And I was like, that's weird, different buttock. Who would name their horse different buttock? Ran a couple of videos that way, and I was like, this can't be right. Oh, different but okay. All right.
Different but okay. I like different but though.
Yeah.
Peter Galassi's favorite horse of all time to call at Hawthorne was a horse named Wedgie. And it was because Wedgie always dropped to the back, and his favorite line was just saying, and it's Wedgie in the rear. And he did it every single call, every single time the horse ran. And he had a blast. He could not wait for this horse to get out dead last in the field.
Tell me horse racing isn't the greatest game of all time. I mean, come on.
Awesome.
Like, find another sport you can get away with that.
I always wanted to name a horse along the inside in second, and then have that horse ranging up on the outside in fourth.
Yeah.
So, and just to mess with the track announcer. And so go back to Margot in a Bubble Bath here. Here's the reason why. Because I actually wanted to talk about this racehorse. The last out was a really good race. Now, you're claimed out of that spot into today's race. So if you can repeat that last performance, I think the horse is going to win here, and you're going to get 4-1. Now, you're coming from the barn of Eddie Keneally into a new barn here. It's a barn that doesn't have a whole lot of starters. They don't win off the claim. I think that's the reason you're probably seeing 4-1. Figure-wise, the last race, nobody's run anything really close to, though, in this spot.
I think that's probably why the horse is taking a little bit of money, a little bit of lukewarm, or at least assigned as the morning line favorite with the barn change, is whether that race was kind of a one-off.
Sure.
Had the horse crank that day and running back to it, having to step up, take on winners. And one of those times where the horse has been protected at the starter allowance, right, first off the claim. So giving the horse a race more or less. But yeah, I mean, you're right. If they run back to that number and effort, has that early speed, has that inside, because the one, while the horse is certainly live, is not one that has necessarily early speed. They're going to want to try to rate inside, they're going to have to stay a little bit close and go out for first run. So the 3 could inherit the lead and the rail. And
Right.
if that's effective, that could be all they need, right?
And the way the track's playing, you almost have to look that way. All right, so now it becomes, and Keeneland's got a lot of very good riders, but it becomes smart rider race. So does Tyler Gaffleone on the 6 chasing after you, or Flavian Pratt on the 7, blame it on Paris? Both horses that potentially could show a little bit of speed, or even Luis Saez all the way on the outside with the 10, tell me when. Just say, we're going to quarter horse out of there, saying we're going as fast as we can to try to get out of there, clear over and get to the inside and win. God, that may be their only shot to win.
Yeah, I think the 10 for sure,
Yeah.
just with the rider change and based on that horse in the past, how they've kind of run their better races. Even last out, they had trouble at the start, then they brushed up. In stakes company, this horse is coming out of races where they have been fast on the lead, and I think they do have to send. And I think also, too, as the races have played on, we've seen how hard it is to make up ground. The riders start adjusting as well.
Right.
Like we talked about the fairgrounds when it was like that early thing where
You
they're
have
like,
to.
oh, you have to be outside on the turf, and they all start doing it, and then it creates,
Right.
craziness. Okay.
That's our guy, though. Here, so we got to give some love to this guy. I know his dad too, because his dad Mel is a very cool
Oh my
guy
gosh.
too.
Yes, he
So,
is.
but
yes.
Steve Simonovich is watching and tuning in. So, Steve, we want to say hi to you. Why aren't you out there selling houses right now, Steve? You're supposed to be a very busy guy doing other stuff than watching us at noon. You better be making some money with us, especially with that 2-horse in the opener at Keeneland. But it is cool checking in with Steve there. He loves racing. They've run horses under their ownership at Hawthorne in the past, and he's a good guy. And
Yeah.
he's a very good contest player.
Very, very good. I like Steve a lot. And his dad, actually, we didn't get any footage of it at the NHC.
Oh, no.
But some of like, actually, kind of one of my favorite moments
I
at
love
the
Mel.
NHC
Mel's awesome.
was Mel giving stories about running horses at Hawthorne. And we probably couldn't videotape them and air them. I don't know if he'd want to go that far, but I love hearing those type of stories, like from the racetrack and being on the owner and, the things that go on behind the scenes that people don't necessarily know. And yeah, just good race track stories and people that just love the game, support the game. And they've done very well, like owners, players, Steve, both Steve and his dad, good contest players.
Well, and I can tell you this, and because I make the line at Hawthorne, it's things I have to take into consideration. I always take certain trainers into consideration. I'll look at certain riders and that. And it's maybe to your fault, Steve and Mel. Maybe you guys bet your horses early. I always have to, if I see their ownership line up there, I have to take that into consideration because they may take even a little bit more action than I would expect on horses more times than not. And a lot of times these horses do run very well. But it's one of those things where maybe if I'm Steve, and just so you know, if you see your horse late at 6-1, maybe I thought it was going to be 8-1, but I knew you're going to throw a few extra bucks on the horse and bet it down a little bit more. So
Right.
something to take into regard. All right, going back because they're only a minute to post here at Keeneland. Emily, if we hadn't seen an inside speed bias, which I'm going to call it that for the first 2, I would have put the 8 key to success in the mix here. Now, you tried to face Wet Paint in the Martha Washington, and we know Wet Paint's a very good racehorse. The 2 races after, not too bad. That start 2 back at 3/4, though, I thought was a legitimate race. And normally that's a
Absolutely.
horse that might be able to figure. I just don't know with how the track's playing here.
Yeah, they broke slow. They moved against the flow. The 1 and the 8 and the 7 are the horses that I used in the multi-race sequence. For those reasons, key to success just really had to find the right level. The starter race 2 back that seemed like the right spot for the horse. A little bit overmatched in the Martha Washington, as you mentioned, a little bit distance-wise. As far as the 7, just going real quick, a horse that's just been progressive race to race. The speed figure improvement, you get a lightly race type that's improving, that's going to be a big price, was listed at 20-1 in the morning line. That one just goes on the ticket automatically.
And there you go. Saez is doing exactly what we expected. Quarter horse it out of the gate for that first 16th. Now his next goal is you have to cross over because regardless of if you quarter horse, you have to get to the inside. So if the 10 makes the inside, this race might be over.
Yeah, it could be
But
very tough.
That was a very smart move. He had only one choice in there, and we talked about that. Get away from the gate and get to the inside.
And a terrible choice in the 3, being like you could have been inside speed
Push through.
and you gave
Should've pushed through.
gave up your advantage. Now you're stuck behind horses.
The 10 ran 2 stakes races in the last 2. This was a starter allowance. He might be gone. Let's find out if the 3's good enough and if the 10 had to use too much to make the lead. I absolutely love the move that Saez made on the 10 because that was your only choice here.
Yeah, no, that was absolutely the right move, taking advantage. The one's been pushed along. The 8's got a big run on the outside, trying to split horses right now. We'll come into the stretch and we'll just see if this comes down to stamina.
See, and now he comes off the rail here a little bit. Let's see if he fights back on the inside.
Just might not have horse. The 3 got the trip after all things said and done. So I kind of knocked the rider, and then they came back and spit it.
But here's the thing: watch the 10. Let's see if the 10
running.
even hangs for a share, because it's this, what is it? The 6 and 8 running underneath, but the 10 normally should be backing off into 4th or 5th right now, and he might end up finishing 4th.
Yeah, they're in that blanket for minors, but I think being kind of inside and forwardly placed, again, it looks a lot like the way the Hawthorne races have run, where horses like the 8 making that move around the turn, you're like. Under normal circumstances, got some momentum. The pace has been pretty honest. You should be able to close, and then they're just kind of like, it's just hard to pass horses in the stretch.
All the UK youths that are out there at Keeneland today watching and love betting names, all bet Margot in a bubble bath there. So that horse is the winner, of course, for sure, in race number 3 at Keeneland. All right, Emily, as we close things out, just a couple of things as reminders moving forward. Of course, we have Club Hawthorne live on our Fridays. We race at Hawthorne on Thursdays and Sundays. But as we get closer to Derby Week, we want to talk about a lot of the festivities. You're going to hear and see each of us all over the place Derby Week. You do a ton of podcasts. I do a ton of radio stuff and that leading up. But for those that want to interact with you, Oakbrook, the Wednesday before Derby, you're going to talk about Oaks Day. You're going to talk about the Derby Stakes. It's a ton of stakes races, and they can interact and talk to you and get a little education too.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what we want to do. I mean, the reason we do the podcast and you do the radio is people want to hear and they want to listen to other people's opinion, pick up a little bit of those knowledge nuggets along the way. Hopefully being on site and having people in one space and kind of like uniting around Hawthorne brings people out, being a little bit more community active, and it gives a good opportunity. We can spend a little bit more time going through the races. We'll be able to have the screen up, so, having the optics plot, having the grid up there for people to kind of see what we're looking at, and the reasons why. I think that's so much like, I like a 31 wins. We're up, we did the pool party.
Oh, Crestwood, yeah.
Yeah, Crestwood. So many people are like, I would have never had that horse. And you can kind of say, okay, here's what we like. Those are the things that sticks with people, or things that they're looking at or talking about this horse like every other pattern. Those are things that it doesn't just happen one time. You see it, you see it happening over and over again. And I think that helps as far as horse players and certainly with our community. And I love being out. I think there's just great people in this scene and being able to interact with them. And hopefully we'll have a special guest, but still working on it.
You got time. You'll be just fine with that. Now, here's the thing. We have a lot of Club Hawthorne parlors. We have Hawthorne Racecourse as well for Derby Day. We are not racing live at Hawthorne that day because we're really going to put a focus into the Kentucky Derby. Some parlors are going to have tents out there. Everybody's going to open early for early bird wagering. Same at Hawthorne as well. If you want to spend the day for races there, reach out to that parlor, see if they have available reservations or not, because things are filling up very quickly. But it is cool. There's the bet and go wagering. And as always, Emily, if they can't make it out there, the app is really nice. It's a great way to go about, make that deposit right there. You make your bet, and you can pull up the video right there too. So ease of access is nice also.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you might have other things going on that day, other things planned, or, you can't travel, whatever those reasons are. So it's nice being able to have that app. Where are you going to be?
Wherever Dakota sends me is where I'm going to be, and that's one of the things too. And I want to give credit to him. He's behind the camera today, but Dakota Schultz, because he's the reason why we are all over the place talking about the Derby and that. And a lot of people, you get a lot of interaction, and when you do a little spot and talk a little bit on the radio, and then all of a sudden they get involved and they get interested in that. And a great example, Rock 95.5 is an awesome partner of ours. Abe Cannon's a guy who wasn't big into horse racing. He loves sports betting. We started talking about horse racing, and then he actually came out and did an event right here at Crazy Pour. And Sergio over here at Crazy Pour was awesome. Open arms, like, I'm a listener. I love it. Everything about that is super cool. But now you get Abe, okay, the Derby's coming up. Let's talk about it. It's not just that commercial spot, but it's expanding about it. And that's what we want to do with racing. Get people interested, get them educated, get them out to the racetrack, out to our OTB locations. They said, we're looking to the right here, and you're seeing a monster screen with Keeneland. That's awesome.
Yeah, it is cool when you see the horses on the big screen.
Yeah, and it's something you're definitely going to see at Derby Day for the showcase as well. But again, you can find us also online. I'm at Hawthorne Gym on Twitter. What is your Twitter handle?
Emily Optics EQ.
All right, so if you have questions for either of us, always reach out to us on Twitter as well. The plots for Hawthorne are available for free each and every day on the website. at Hawthorne Racecourse, as well as my picks too. Good luck to everybody. Another edition of Club Hawthorne Live. We had ourselves a pretty good day. Margot in a bubble bath, an awesome named horse wins at 9-2 to close things out. Good luck to everybody. Hopefully we can see you out at the track for live racing on Sunday. Take care.